The Savior's Champion is kind of a cross between like the Hunger Games and Squid Game. Now in Squid Game, the contestants were in very desperate circumstances, and they kind of know but they don't really understand what they're getting into. They think they're playing child's games for a humongous pot of money. The thing that they don't understand, though, is that when they're eliminated from competition, that they're actually eliminated, meaning that they lose their life. So that's kind of a big twist in that one. If you haven't seen Squid Game, by the way, I highly recommend it. It is fucking fantastic. I love it. Cannot say enough about that. The Hunger Games, of course, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. They also are going into a competition. Of course, they're forced into it. I mean, literally at gunpoint, you have to go. You don't have a choice. And it's kids killing kids. But, you know, there's only going to be one competitor that survives. And they kind of all understand that. They're chosen among a lot. I mean, you guys are all familiar with Hunger Games. Savior's Champion is kind of similar. You have a lot of contestants that are competing for the hand of the Savior, who is now of age. They're going to win a lot of money. They're going to have prestige, and of course they're going to have the hand of the Savior, who basically is the realm's most powerful leader. She's beautiful. She is popular. I mean, everybody worships her. She kind of holds the glue together of society. So this is a very important event. As you can imagine, you're going to get a lot of Soldier of Fortune types, because they're going to be in the arena. They're going to be competing against each other. They're going to be death matches. They're going to be, you know, using their wits against each other in all sorts of challenges and stuff. So as you would expect, you're going to get a lot of these Soldier of Fortune types. And then on the other hand, you get these fucking idiots who are going on a suicide mission. They don't have a goddamn clue. People like Milo. And the protagonist, Tobias, who has no skills as a combat warrior. No, he will be coming with his sturdy paintbrush, because he's a painter. He's a laborer. He has no skills as a warrior. So right from the get-go, the premise is very flawed. It's very inconsistent. It's weird. I mean, who's going to save Tobias? Because it's not going to be himself. And we do see that you know, Jena Moreci does throw in the Deus Machina. Magic is going to save him, of course. So that's kind of the overview of it. Tobias needs money because, and we do feel sorry for Tobias. I mean, his sister met with a horrible accident along with his father, who actually lost his life. And she, however, is unable to walk. So she's pretty much paralyzed. She can't have any use of her legs. So Tobias needs money to care for her. He doesn't care about the Savior. He doesn't not interested in winning the hand of the Savior. He's really in it for the money. So that is why he's going into it. And that's the basic premise of the Hunger Games. The romance, first of all, this book is supposed to be dark fiction, dark fantasy. Jena Moreci claims that this book is actually dark fantasy with elements of romance. And actually, in actuality, it's the reverse. It's a YA romance with elements of dark fantasy. She throws in a lot of profanity, which she kind of has to do because she realizes, oh, this isn't YA, this is dark fantasy. I have to, you know, throw in the cuss words and stuff. So we get a lot of that. But basically what dominates the plot is this very slow burn YA romance, which I felt kind of gypped off at, if you want to know the truth, because she put in there sexual situations, and they never actually have sex. I mean, they come very close to having sex. The closest thing to sex is a guy getting a blowjob, which we don't really even see. It's just the guy's head bobbing up and down. I think they get naked at one point. Somebody always interrupts them. They never actually get to it. It's a very, very slow burn romance. Layla, the quote-unquote savior, is expecting Tobias to basically court her, which is ridiculous because they're under this life and death circumstances. He's going into these challenges, and he's probably going to lose his life. This very YA romance, this slow burn romance, it doesn't gel together very well. It goes together about as well as oil and water. Okay, so the characters are, there's not a lot of character development in this, even Tobias. Now you do feel sorry for Tobias, but he's just an idiot. I mean, he's not the sharpest tool in the tool shed, and it's not even that he's stupid. He can actually solve riddles, but he's not the most strategic person. First of all, the fact that he's even entering the contest is ridiculous. He reminds me of some 18-year-old kid who goes to Tijuana for the first time and finds himself in a cat house and completely maxed out his credit cards and got a tattoo on his ass. Of course, with Tobias's situation, he doesn't even drink, so he can't even use that excuse. He just finds himself entering this contest out of desperation, just on kind of a whim. So he's not the smartest person. And his character is very inconsistent. First of all, he's actually a selfless person. He's good. He's got compassion, but he's very weak. He's very weak of character. He has to have somebody else save him. He doesn't have any battle prowess. He's not the most strategic person. He gets himself into awful situations. He makes enemies where he shouldn't. He throws contests so he can spend time with Layla, earning the chagrin of the savior. You know, he doesn't think things through very well. And not only that, he's kind of a prude, but at the same time he commits a murder. He doesn't have a problem with that, which is to be expected. I mean, in this contest, everybody's going to die. Everybody knows that there's only going to be 2 competitors that basically survive, that basically leave the contest. The rest of them are going to die, except for one, the guy that actually wins the tournament himself. So his character is very underdeveloped, and it's hard to follow a protagonist who is very weak and insecure and not the sharpest tool in the tool shed. It really bogs the story down. And then we also have Layla, who is a lot more interesting than Tobias. She has the real power, which makes you wonder. She's not quote unquote the savior, but she has healing. She has magic abilities, and she can actually transfer them to people. Tobias, for instance, doesn't have any battle prowess, and then he ends up fighting against this professional soldier, Annius. This guy is a badass. He's going to lose. There's no question. So what happens, of course? Yes, he gets a blessing from Layla, and this blessing actually gives him teleportation abilities. He can actually teleport, or as they call it, shadow walk. So it's ridiculous. I mean, I think most of the fight scenes are done very well, but she's imbuing him with all these powers just through magic because he can't save himself. And it just really bogs the story down. That a guy who can just suddenly have no battle experience and no skills on the battlefield is just given this stuff just for the sake that, the romance can live. There was one character who actually had some character development. It was Orion. He didn't last very long, unfortunately, but he was one of the few characters that actually had some depth. There's 2 villains in the story, and they're given almost no depth. We know that, for instance, the Sovereign is a fucking asshole and a piece of shit. I mean, what kind of guy is trying to usurp his own daughter and have her killed? But we don't really understand his motivations. It's never really explained to us. So the characters are very underdeveloped in this. I would have liked to have seen it from Layla's perspective more, but unfortunately we only get Tobias's. The world building in this is very sparse. So Jena uses a soft magic system, which means that basically anything that can happen, when they're in the labyrinth, for instance, walls disappear, and then they're suddenly in a lush forest, and there's this big waterfall, and they have to dive down into this water to get these keys, and everything just opens up for them. The ground disappears, and they're under this gauntlet. It just defies the laws of physics, and it's never explained. Who's doing this? There's only one person in the whole realm who even has any magic abilities, and that's Layla. But is she doing it? We don't know. It's never explained. The world building is very sparse. Now, the dialogue I didn't have a problem with too much. But it's very YA, like I said. A lot of the conversations are what you would find a 19-year-old talking about. A lot of the locker room talk that the guys talked about was how many women they boned and all that. And guys don't always talk about that, especially guys that are in their 30s. 16 to 19-year-olds are going to talk like that, yes, but a 35-year-old man, probably not so much. I thought it was realistic up to a certain point, but then it kind of became grating. The banner between, Tobias and Layla and their long drawn out, romance. I mean, it got kind of tiresome after a while. Overall, I thought the dialogue was okay. There were a few things that really took me out of the story. When Tobias said, "We can multitask." I'm like, fucking multitask? Are you kidding me? That is an American idiom. It should never be in a fantasy of the Roman times. I mean, Jesus Christ, that was the worst. A developmental editor would have caught that. But that's not something that ever should have been in there. It just takes you out of the story. I'm like, what? It was ridiculous. Little things like that, but that kind of take you out of the story. And when you only have one plot twist in the whole book, you better make it good, okay? But it wasn't, okay? And the reason there's not a lot of plot twists is because there's a complete lack of dynamic characters. Jena did this whole thing on dynamic and static characters, and it's ironic that in her whole book she doesn't have one dynamic character. Not one character can actually change the course of the plot. The plot has to have Tobias survive. This romance has to be long, drawn out. He has to survive, and nothing is going to upend that. The plot twist was not, I could see it coming a mile away. Most of the readers are going to probably figure out the plot twist by about 2/3. I figured it out well before then. Towards the end of the book, she's not sprinkling breadcrumbs. She's throwing out loaves of bread. And it's funny because this plot twist, which everybody else can see, and we're sitting here going through the eyes of Tobias, he can't fucking figure it out to save his life. He has all these clues thrown at him, and he cannot figure it out, which again bogs down the story a lot. And also we realize how stupid this guy is. He just can't figure it out. It's hitting him in the fucking face, and he just can't figure it out. It does really bog the story down when you only have one plot twist and you don't do it and you don't pull it off very well. It's not going to bode well. The character perspective is interesting, and probably a lot of people won't notice stuff like this, but since I'm a writer, I write in third person omniscient. And I love writing in third person omniscient because it really allows you to open up the plot. You can have multi-layers, you can have a lot of character perspectives, so we get a lot of character development. You can really layer the plot. It's a great way to write in. I love reading books that are in third person omniscient. Usually when you write in third person omniscient, you will use at least 4 to 6 character perspectives. Sometimes more than that. I mean, Stephen King maybe uses 15, 20. George R. R. Martin, I think he had one character narrate each one of his chapters. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. I use maybe 10, 15. Usually you're going to use at least 4 to 6. How many does Jena use? One character perspective. Using one character perspective and writing in third person omniscient, it's like buying a 40,000 square foot mansion and then confining yourself to the servants' quarters. You're kind of missing the point. You could have really opened things up. I would have loved to have learned more about Layla. She was infinitely more interesting than Tobias was. I would have liked to have gotten character perspectives from the villains, but we don't really know too much about them. And then I didn't realize that the whole thing is going to be in his perspective, and then as I looked at the blurb of the second book, I realized, okay, that makes sense, because the next book that comes out is written in Layla's perspective, which kind of sucks, because I think if you're going to write a series, I think you should continue on with the series. Give us something new. Everybody knows who died. We all know the competitors who died. We all know how things ended at the end of the book. so you're not really giving us anything new. I think that's kind of jipping off your readers. But anyway, that's my opinion. So anyway, yeah, my opinion is probably the minority. As I mentioned, a lot of people really love this. They really love the romance in it. I just didn't find it. I found it very out of place in this, Squid Game type setting, life and death circumstances. So it didn't really work for me. But I will say that Jena Moreci is definitely a good writer. I thought she did a good job with, a less than good, conceived plot, so storyline. But her actual writing ability is good. I just, I didn't really connect well with the story. So anyway, that's all I have for you today. This, again, I'm not going to be doing this kind of thing very often. I don't do reviews on a regular basis. I just wanted to do one, just see what it was like. I did enjoy it somewhat, as I mentioned, but if I had to review it, I would probably, because she's an indie like myself, give her 2.5, 3 stars. If she was traditionally published, I would have given it 2, because I would expect something more from traditionally published. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. Appreciate it, guys. If you like my content, do give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. I appreciate with you hanging out with me and listening to my review. Hopefully it didn't turn into too much of a rant, so I appreciate it. Thanks.